I went to Scotland and had this very powerful experience, the best way I can describe it, it was a recall of how things really are and where we belong, what we are. It was a memory. And at that moment, I realized everybody has that. They just got a filter in front of them, okay, a film. But everybody is totally already in this state. It's just that there's a distraction, there's a screen, you know, sort of frosted glass.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said if we continue to be in this dream world, we're going to continue to be sort of in a loop of figuring out our problems. And I thought that was really cool because I know that you can tell the difference between a regular dream and when you are having a lucid dream or you're downloading information from the collective consciousness. You can tell the difference between those experiences while you're sleeping. And I thought about one of the ways to notice that is a lot of times just a regular dream will be about sort of a stressor that's been on your mind or just something that you need to do that's nagging in your mind. Like your mind is venting about a problem. And it's interesting that like the global zeitgeist sort of has that theme as well of just constant issues, constant conflict, constant, incoherent, chaotic, interaction. So it sort of aligns with that philosophy that we are in a dream.
Yes, it's very, very strong. This dream awareness, to become lucid in this dream, becoming awake, relating to the present moment, that's the easiest way to connect to it, by sort of seeing what's there, and just sort of letting all the other things go to the pure moment. You know, that's the thing. If you can hold this, of course, I think it's very much like something one almost has to get used to in a way. At one point, I just had to look at something to remind me that is reality, that is being, okay? And everything I looked at was a clue for me to remind myself that is, you know, being is everywhere, okay? I can't get lost because the mere fact that things exist, you know, puts me back into connection of it, because the rest is only thoughts, our dreams, you know.
The metaphor of the lamp was very well said. It made me happy, and it's a beautiful. I mean, I suppose it's a philosophy, but also it's really more of just a description of reality, and something that I know to be true as well. In my own experience, albeit perhaps, temporarily, right, in short moments, it reminds me, I did a 7-day water fast with my friend Ace, who's maybe listening right now. And coming out of that, I felt amazing, just the most lucid and clear that I've ever felt in my life. In maybe the week after I started eating again. And it was like, oh, wow. It was what was so profound about it was to experientially know that there are higher dimensions of consciousness. And it's something that is hard to describe, right? Hard to put into words, because by nature, it is an experience. It reminds me a lot of what Eckhart Tolle talks about, the present moment. And by the way, you sound kind of very similar to him. When you talk about similar things, just throwing that out there. I don't know if anyone has ever mentioned that before.
Yeah, I've got in the 70s, I was a very strong connoisseur of Krishnamurti. I don't know whether...
Yes.
Krishnamurti is a sort of 1970s Eckhart Tolle, really.
Right.
He talked about the same thing, and of course Ramana Maharshi and these people. It's all to do with that thing, of awareness, and that's basically it.
Yeah, I wanted to share another metaphor that came to me in a similar way of like the way you're describing identity and personality and the oneness. My sister, when she was a kid, she used to sit in this corner of our room and she would play with her Barbie dolls and make them talk, and like make them play like hold them both up like this with their hands. And I, there's this like funny idea that came to me, like that as a metaphor for our relationship with God, in
Mhm.
that it's almost like God is the person playing with the Barbie dolls, and we're the dolls in the bodies temporarily in this dimension, experiencing life, having this experience. But
Mhm.
ultimately, we come from the same that same source, that same energy that is the figure making the dolls
Mhm.
move.
Animating them.
Right.
Yeah, it's a nice picture. Yeah, the way I experienced it early on was when I had my first very powerful experience. Was I was left with what I called a silent companion. Okay, there was something all the time walking beside me, and I
Mm.
couldn't figure out what that was, but it was a kind of presence, a benevolent presence, but it never spoke to me. It never, but I only had to ask a question, direct a question to this presence, and I would get the answer. And the other thing is, I never had a guru or a teacher as such. I always referred to this
Mm.
presence. And the presence would go
Mm.
away when I was being inauthentic, okay, or was
Mm.
starting to play games or
Mm.
indulged in some superficial, artificial thing. Then this presence suddenly, I thought, oh, what happened to my silent companion? So that was a way which taught me awareness. When the silent companion left, the interesting thing was, uh, when I went to Scotland, the silent companion disappeared because I realized I was the silent companion.
Mm.
You know? so I have no
Mm.
silent companion anymore, and that's the thing. You only play the doll's figures if you are still identified with the two characters, let's say, or this Barbie doll character. If you're still identified, when this identification stops, you are sort of the operator of the dolls. That also means you have got unlimited freedom. The world opens for you.
Yeah, and I think this might be a good segue into what I'm really looking to ask you about past life experiences. And there's this one moment in the book, one of the two books, I forget which one, where you're talking about this tapestry, and
Oh
you were
yeah,
able to see all the different versions of yourself, and some of which were not human. And
yeah.
I've had my own bizarre astral experience where like I was hanging out in some club in another dimension and I was like a blue bird and I had like a blue like claws and I was trying to find a mirror to like see myself but it wasn't working. So that that's the only really like non-human sort of dream that I've ever had, and it stood out of course because that's like really strange at this level.
Yeah.
But man, I'd love to just if you could share a little bit about that tapestry experience. That was so fascinating for me.
Yes. Now that was an interesting thing because another way of describing it, because it's experiencing the whole of your being state of your self, in all the shapes, is like an infinite three-dimensional web,
Hmm.
and you can and when you're in a higher state of consciousness, that's how you see yourself, your history. And then you can, certain things poke out, they flash in the web. And as you zoom into it, you know, it gets closer, suddenly you see, you enter into your past, another role you played in a past life. Okay, so there are these junctions, and you go into it, and you are it. You know, for example, if in one of the experiences, I was on another planet, and I was digging for treasures and things, you know, and it was very strange because difficult to describe. We were digging for images and stones which would render other matter transparent, and it was a very strange kind of life, which was definitely not on the physical level. Yeah. And so, but when I was experiencing it, I was actually handling the things. I knew my family, you know, everything of that person, while at the same time I was aware that I was having this experience. Okay, and then you can zoom out of it, and then you can also see things in the web which need attention, you know, problem areas. And I felt this is the way reincarnation happens. You know, you pick up certain problem areas, and they all congeal, and then they're attracted to a constellation on Earth, let's say, you know, certain parents. There's a sort of attraction going on. It's like a supercomputer, you know, or quantum computer. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing mechanism which brings all these things together. And then you have an incarnation where you have the opportunity to work with these issues. Mm. Once you have worked with them, you know, and you go back, you can see, that spot of the web is sort of not so dark anymore. You know, some certain things happened with it, you know, there's things resolved. And so this web is a sum total of who you are, you know, and you can, I've had different past life experiences, which I described in more detail in my first book. But this is an interesting way of finding out who you are. And very often I found the way I was attracted to past lives was where I needed to know certain characteristics of mine, you know, certain shortcomings. Why were they there? Mm-hmm. And they showed up in a past life. Mm-hmm. You know, let's say I was a very mean bastard, you know. and I did, in this life, I did things or said things which I said, what did I just say? Where did this come from? You know, and then having out of body experience, bang, I went straight there and I recognized it. And then when I recognized it, it went, you know, it's a bit like hypnotherapy or counseling, or, you know, mm-hmm. You go back into things, you face them, you know where they come from, and then they're dissolved. And you can do that with lucid dreams as well.
That's so cool. I've had many experiences like that. Like, yeah. I have a ton. I have a very, like, really I don't know what you would call it. I don't want to, like, give it a verb or whatever, but, like, I have a lot of really crazy dreams or dream world experiences. A lot of, I encountered different universes, different beings that aren't human. Sometimes they're not even entirely, like, living. They're, like, made of objects. I've experienced entire civilizations of insects that have like, I've had the most crazy things. And I've also experienced like more human things, like communicating with past loved ones, or, you know, receiving precognitive messages or warnings or things like that. And I understand, or like past lives, I've talked to friends who have had a lot of past life experiences in their dreams. Like someone dreamed about being a Viking warrior and sort of experienced the trauma of having murdered in war. And of course, in this waking life, they've never experienced anything like that. And it's easier to piece those pieces together and understand like what you can do with those experiences. Like you can heal parts of your personality or traumas that you've been through. But when we're experiencing these other dimensions in completely foreign realms, what do we do with that? Is there an answer, or is it just an experience? Is there a value, or is it just something that we're blessed to get to experience?
Yes, I don't think our mind, our present mind, our cognitive mind, we carry on at the moment. It's not really its job, or it can't really deal with it on its own. It's just it's our super consciousness which puts all these things into place and puts it all together. So we have got we are limited in what we can do with these things, but it's when we see ourselves no longer as a person tied to time and space and a role we play at the moment, but see ourselves from our true self, then these things start making sense. From that point of view, they make sense. Here we may experience the most incredible things, but they may not make any sense, or we think, oh, that's really unjust, or that's really fortunate, or whatever, and it doesn't make any sense. We have to see it in a greater context of what we are, and that is only really possible when we get back to our home state,
So something I'm dying to ask you is about the independence of these other dimensions, in that when we have a lucid dream, we become aware, are we in a sense pushing away a part of ourselves that is currently in that dimension, having his or her own experience independently of us, or something, or is there something else going on there? Like, do we exist simultaneously in other dimensions all at once?
Yes, we are multidimensional beings. We are only aware of the place where we place our awareness, our attention. That's, for example, at the moment it's a physical place, but simultaneously we're also operating on other dimensions. And the thing is, for example, if you let's say you're in your office, you're doing some work and typing, but at the same time you think, oh, looking forward to my holiday, okay? And you're walking along a beach somewhere warm and sunny, and your mental body is actually on the beach, walking along there and enjoying the sunshine. Now, if you had the power to actually focus on that beach long enough, you would actually, your awareness would then jump into life, and you would really be there. And if that happens, and some people can do that, I spoke to a woman whose husband is continuously out of body, almost always, and he doesn't speak to. She interviews him. There's a book she has written, and the thing is, you can transport your awareness from one state to another if you have reached that level of unfoldment, so you can actually be aware of the other bodies. I mean, the best way I can describe it was when I was riding a bike along the beach one sunny day. I was riding the bike, and suddenly I was also on another dimensional level, from where I could see me riding the bike, but the landscape I was riding through was different, and it was much brighter and more hard to describe.
Yeah, there's an experience like of different kinds of physics that I've noticed too in these experiences where like you see colors that we don't see here, but you can't remember them or explain them because we don't have the hardware to do that, or like there's the light is different, like light is brighter in certain places, like things that are like iridescent or sparkling in other dimensions are like just it's overwhelming how beautiful it is. So I think I kind of know what you're talking about there.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's a really good point, because a lot of the time when I get into these states and I think these are so real, these words are so real, they are so wonderful. Okay, why is that not front page news? because come on, you know, this is reality.
Right.
But when I come back into this sort of physical body, I can't catch it, you know. I have the picture in my mind, but there's no way I can translate it, because it's just out of reach for the physical brain, you know. So here comes the virtual reality.
Right.
I try to get back into environments which are literally indescribable and literally they don't exist here. They can't exist. And yet I'm still not able to, because it's on a different level of consciousness. So what I'm trying to do with these virtual reality things, I create worlds where I use light, and I use it, the way I use it is mist, you know, like there's a pervading light. And I try to create an atmosphere, a kind of feeling, and hopefully it will trigger a memory in people, you know. So that's what I'm hoping for. I hope when we put the headset on and they're surrounded by these colors and these sort of patterns and whatever, they think, oh yeah, hang on a minute, that reminds me of something, you know. And hopefully, if that triggers a lucid dream, you know, that would be brilliant. That's what I'm trying to do. Perhaps
right.
do something which will trigger something in people, like a memory, you know, like you just said, what you just described, you know, wouldn't be good if you could just sort of trigger this and get back into this.
Yeah, so VR is fascinating and seems like a perfect tool for you to be able to share your experiences with other people, as you were mentioning, and as I've know from my own experience as well. It's so challenging to convey what these worlds are like, and it's just mind blowing because I to this day still have very clear and vivid memories of being in other dimensions, truly feeling like embodied in there, and to the same degree. And the best way to describe it is like, for those listening, for those watching, wherever you are, whatever you're looking at and feeling, the level of clarity that you're experiencing now, imagine that in a dream. That same level of detail and that same level of presence. In fact, what's so just like hard to process is actually, it's not even the same level of detail. It's more.
Hyper
For example,
real. It's like
I don't need, you know, my vision here is not the best. It's not awful, but it's not the best. And I wear glasses sometimes. I don't need glasses in other dimensions. My vision is perfect, and it's just stunning the level of detail of like when I'm able to like look at my hand or look at an object or look at the walls and see art on the walls. And okay, so here's something that I'm really dying to ask you as well. I have so many questions. So it reminds me of like I've had a few dreams where I've noticed that it's like a memory. There's something familiar about the environment where I've been here before. It's maybe not the exact same room, but it's like a different room in the same building, perhaps, for example. Am I visiting a place that is persistent, like in the same way that I can go out on the street right now and go down to a cafe and I know it's going to be there?
Yes.
Does it work similarly? I guess is sort of an obvious question, or there's an obvious answer, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around that because we're so used to dreams being this sort of like loose,
Nebulous kind of
weird
like.
mess of just like things we can't remember.
No, there are localities which are persistent,
Yeah.
persistent localities. For example, I personally have got at least two houses I visit regularly. One, one
Oh
house,
man, what are they like?
yeah, one house I described in my last book, Vistas of Infinity. I know every room, everything, but because I haven't visited it for a while, I found like last time I came back, there were squatters in there.
Oh man.
And the squatters immediately recognized that I was the owner.
Oh man.
And I made contact with one of the guys, and he said, "Look, I give you a guided tour, you know." And he introduced me, and they were all artists. That's really interesting
So bizarre.
because my house was sort of um, had the art imprint, and all the people who lived there were all artists.
Right.
So I was looking at their artwork, and we had a great time, really, because there were various types of characters. It's in my book, Vistas of Infinity, if you want to read up on it. And there are other localities I'm very familiar with, you know, and I visit, and different parts um, of Brighton, for example, near where we live. I go to various parts which look totally different to what they are in the physical reality, but there's always the same on the astral level, you know.
Mm.
So we have actually, especially if you are dream a lot, you know, you will find, and if you record your dream, you will find the same places popping up over and over again because we
Mm-hmm.
have sort of we have got some quantum link to
Mm-hmm.
the higher dimensional levels. You know,
Yeah.
some entanglement, quantum
Wow.
entanglement to certain
Yeah.
states of consciousness which are rooted, certain localities which are rooted on another dimensional level. And very early on, I found, and that's why I called my book Multidimensional Man, that every place has got a locality on right up to the source,
Mm.
has got levels, and you can always recognize them, even if they look totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So I always went to a place and I recognized, oh, that is Hamburg, you know, although it looked completely different, you know, but I recognized this, it's like the soul of the place, you know, which feeds right through to the physical level. And I went to a place in Hamburg, uh, near the art school where I was taught. There was a chapel, a church, and on the astral level, I visited the place, the church, but it looked completely different. And then I thought, okay, next time I go to Hamburg, I visit this place, and I instantly recognized the atmosphere, the same
Mm.
atmosphere. Okay, so it was just a different expression of the church, and that's really interesting. And yes, I had a lot of these multidimensional localities, you know, and so yeah.
It makes me think of like how we have longitude and latitude here for navigating around the planet. I don't know what you would call it
In the
on
dimensions.
a like a
Yeah.
higher multidimensional level, but I have had this sort of image in my mind for a long time when I'm wondering about these things of like sort of like a stereolithographic holographic universe, and it's almost like we tune our consciousness to different frequencies that then match certain wavelengths, and then we can materialize on different realms depending on if the frequency matches up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's just what it makes me think about when you talk about like reaching different localities and having better control over like how to tune the dial to reach those frequencies at will would be really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes a lot of practice, but yeah, I mean, it's just a reality, you know. It's just a matter of tuning our perception.
Yeah.
And
It reminds me, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. I grew up in Union Square in New York City, and I've had a number of experiences, number of dreams, lucid dreams, where I've visited what I could really best describe as the higher dimensional versions of Union Square, where
mm-hmm,
it was very, it looked similar but different in
mm-hmm,
that I immediately knew where I was. I felt like I was home. I recognized it, but all the restaurants were different. There was
yeah,
a lot more people. There was a lot more activity, and there was something there about in a reminded of your book, how you describe it. There's it's almost like these other dimensions. Well, rather some dimensions, because not all of them. Some of the dimensions they have more energy. There's higher energy, so that higher energy is going to reflect and manifest as
yeah,
more people, as brighter colors, as bigger buildings, as just more almost like cartoon circus-esque type of vibes that are not necessarily as present here on this level.
mm. Yes. So it's, I found in some experience, I found everything was running faster. Everything was going in hyperdrive, you know, sort of, there was more activity. And I became quite exhausted after a while to participate in this hyper activity, you know. And I thought, oh, they are on a totally different uh, vibration,
Mm.
you know. And I had to take myself away from this hyperdrive activity, you know. So I know what you're talking about, and this is equally true with the profusion of the environment, you know, the complexity, you know, you're walking through a world where things are so incredibly complex. Um, for example, I went through a city and it was just unbelievable how detailed a whole house was, which would take people hundreds of years to carve, little figurines set
Mm-hmm.
in bricks, you know, which were incredibly complex. And the whole house was made out of these incredible complex figurines, uh, totally mind blowing. And as you went closer, you could see there was movement,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know, and things like that. Yeah, it's out of this world. And the thing is, of course, it's basically energy which is released from the physical state, which is very slow. You know, very here we can't do that. We have to take time,
Mm-hmm.
time and skill, you know, to create something,
Mm-hmm.
even, you know, remotely.
Right. Yeah. So we absolutely can create in this dimension.
Yeah,
I mean, we look around, everything around us is created by, well, not everything. A lot of, if we live in a city, for example,
yeah,
most of what we see in a city was created by other humans, right? The buildings, the roads, and the technology. And that took a person or a group of people, right, to go from the will in the imagination. And Barbara Marx Hubbard talks about that process of manifestation. If everything first begins in the mind and the imagination, then in action, right, and then in reality. And the difference, I suppose, after reading and learning about your experiences between this dimension and the other dimensions, is it's the rate of speed in which we're able to create. Here, it's just everything is a little bit slower, whereas in other dimensions, it's almost like instantaneous. And perhaps there's we could almost think of this dimension as sort of like a training ground, or I don't know. I mean, have you considered like for what purpose the limitations are on this dimension? Like, we can't fly in this dimension, but we can
Yeah.
fly in many other dimensions.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
can create, but we can create much slower. So, what have you considered? Like, have you found out or discovered what the purpose of that is?
Yes, I think it's basically resistance,
Mm.
The, the reason why so many people feel drawn to the physical dimension is because there's resistance. And resistance causes an incredible challenge,
Mm.
which you need to grapple with and overcome. And that's why people get maximum learning experience on this dimension, because they're continuously confronted with resistance,
Wow.
problems, and challenges. And that
Interesting.
activates part in our soul, which we can only
Wow.
get in a physical environment. You know?
Oh.
And
Okay.
that's why the world is so overcrowded. Everybody wants
Ah.
to have a part of it. So
Wow. Okay. That's very helpful. So there's something about the resistance, the quality of resistance in this earth, this dimension, that our souls are attracted to, because in other dimensions
it's too easy.
there really is no resistance, or there's significantly less resistance, in that we can just go fly around and create and just have a blast going to all different places. But
Yeah.
here it's like it's a unique sort of space
Mm,
where we're going to be put through a level of challenge that
mm,
is not found
mm.
as much in
Yeah.
other places.
Like having instantaneous skills like that you want to have. I've had experiences where I knew how to play guitar really well. I've like had 2 lessons in my whole life, but I've had experiences where I knew how to play guitar very well. And it was,
Yes.
you can't like dream that you know and experience the knowing of it, or like learning like very dense subject matter and knowing it very well and having spent no time learning it. That's another crazy experience. But like here in the physical realm, it takes years to become an expert on a topic or like learn an instrument or something like that.
That's right. And also on the next dimension, you can draw from experience you already had much more easily. So you find yourself on the astral level, let's say, and you touch a piano and suddenly you can play
Yeah.
because all the memory is still there, the skill set is still there. That's really easy. But of course, there are other challenges on those dimensions which are
Mm,
unique
sure.
for those dimensions. That's why people there are lots of things you can do which you cannot do here, and you can experience and learn which you cannot down here. But if you really want to be challenged, you get a physical body.
Wow. Love it. So for those listening, if you're struggling with you know, uh, something in your life, just remember this part of the
Great for
conversation, right? There's a reason for it. There's a part there's something that we came here actually to experience that exactly. And so it's all about knowing that we can overcome it, and it's we can accomplish whatever we put our mind to.
yeah. Yes.
So we should wrap up soon, but I want to
Yeah.
explore
I was
one
just saying.
final.
So, okay.
Yeah, I know it's getting a little late there, and we super appreciate your time. Just the concept of death, and I heard you talking about this in previous interviews, and of course, you write a lot about it in your books. When I'm in these other dimensions, the first question I find myself asking just out loud in my mind in that space is this are we in the afterlife? Is this where people come when we die? And of course, your book, it's like Vistas of Infinity. I forget something about the tagline is about the afterlife, and you mentioned something very beautiful about how we're still connected to our loved ones even after they've passed on to other dimensions. Can you talk a little bit about that connection and what that means for you?
Yes, I mean that I had a lot of experience with my deceased mother and with my brother-in-law who I never really got built up a rapport. You know, I never really built up a rapport with my brother-in-law. But then when he died, I visited him and he apologized to me, you know, and we became really good friends and things like that. And also my mother, curiously enough, who never was open to, I told her about it when she became ill. I gave her a book about the afterlife, but she wasn't interested. And then she started teaching me, you know, telling me things. You know, for example, she said, Jurgen, you have to stop looking at me as your mother, you know. And she made a very clear point about that, you know, because
that's trippy.
Yeah, and and the thing is, she picked things up which were very profound, and I said, "What do you mean?" You know, and then I thought, okay, maybe next time I'm down here, she may be my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, who knows? We don't know
So play
what
different roles for each
constellation
other.
we choose in order to benefit from our intense connectedness. And that's the other thing. The key thing of a good connection with a person we have lost is love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because love takes us right through to the core level of where we are closest to the person. So we can never lose the person when we love the person. You know, I noticed that, for example, my father in my latest book, I lost my father when I was 9 years old. Okay, and I had problems finding him on the astral level. And then on one occasion, I said, "Take me to my father," you know, and I ended up on a farm in Eastern Russia. And there was my brother as a 12-year-old boy with a push bike. And he stopped and he didn't say anything, but in his astral body, he said, Jurgen, Jurgen, you know, so he recognized me as a 12-year-old boy. And there was another boy next to him that was his father in the previous life. Of course, when I saw it, I had the whole download. And his mother was in the kitchen in this farm, and it was his mother. Now, my father lost his parents in the pandemic in 1980. Yeah, where 50 million people died. He lost both his parents when he was 2 years old. Okay, he became an orphan. And he had now in this life, he had his family back where he lost it, you know. So I saw the whole thing playing out again, but he still recognized me as Jurgen because his astral memory was fully intact, you know. So it doesn't matter if we lose somebody, it doesn't matter where they are incarnated, they've still got their bodies intact. And the higher the body is, the more memory it has, you know. And if you have an astral travel, I don't know whether you have experienced that, but sometimes you have a dream and you meet people, and when you wake up, you think they're good friends. And when you wake up and you wonder, how do I know these people? Where do I know them from? And they're not on this level.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So we have relationships on the astral level. And when we get,
have you ever experienced I don't know, I call it body jumping, what sounds really creepy, but even people in this reality that I know in dream worlds have experienced them in other people's physical being, but I know that it's them wearing a different identity. And I've done that in dreams. Have you ever experienced that?
yeah.
It's crazy, right? It's like, what is going on?
Yes, that's the thing. That's the multidimensionality of our consciousness. You know, we normally on this level, if you're not sort of trained in this, we tend to dismiss things as a little fancies or something, you know. But there is a reason for all these experiences. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's a great stopping point. There's of course, I mean, I have a whole list of questions. We would have to have you back on at some point in the future, but um, I am so grateful for you sharing your experiences in your books. And again, I encourage everyone listening to go and read them. They're really entertaining and fun and interesting, and will really broaden your horizons about what is possible for us as conscious beings, and to recognize just the tremendous amount of power that we really have, and we're not that small self that we sometimes tell ourselves that we are. We believe in this fake idea that we are powerless, and that's what's so great about what you're revealing for us and helping us remember is our multidimensional self, which has been kept secret for a long time, and now you are helping to reveal it for all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cosmo and Summer.
Thank you.
One thing maybe at the end I like to say.
Yeah, go for it.
I do a video series which is called Afterlife Answers. So what it is, people send in questions and I talk about them in a small group. And on my video channel, there are all these 23 videos at the moment. There are all kinds of questions are being answered, So I just thought I'd leave it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And where else can people find more about your work and your books?
Yeah, just if you type into YouTube my name, you will get all my other work coming up. And yeah, I'm still working. I'm keeping notes of what's happening. Eventually, I will write possibly another book, but it's got to be the right time and the right circumstances.
Sure.
So in the meantime, my website's multidimensionalman.com. If you want to have the virtual reality experience, they're all free. I raised some money with people who supported it, which allowed me to do it. So everything I do in virtual reality will be out there free for anybody to download. And that is magicfantasyart.com. So these two websites, basically.
Thank you. Well, we will link to those in the show notes. Thank you so much, Jurgen, for your time. This has been a wonderful conversation. So much fun to explore all these other dimensions and possibilities. If you are listening still, please leave us a review on iTunes. That would be wonderful. Or share a link to this episode with your friends at alifeeconomy.com. We'll be back in a few weeks and hope you have a fantastic week. See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.